editorials. We are broadcasting live from Canada. My name is Sandra Asante. Today's spotlight is on Ethiopian Tigray conflict as well as their terror group. So stay tuned. I'll be back after the break. Thank you so much for staying with me. We start with the Ethiopian conflict, and as fighting in Ethiopia's northernmost region hits the 6-month mark, we take a look at some of the most important events of the conflict. 6 months ago, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent federal troops into Tigray for a military campaign against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the northern region's ruling party that had dominated national politics for decades. Abiy, the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize winner, promised the air and ground operation will be shifted and targeted. However, violence rumbled on and reports of massacre, rape, and widespread hunger continues to emerge as analysts warn of a protracted conflict that risks dragging on for years. Here is a timeline of the ongoing conflict. In the early hours of November 4th, 2020, Abiy ordered a military response to what he calls a treacherous attack on federal army camps in Tigray. The Prime Minister blames the attack on the TPLF, which was at the helm of Ethiopia's governing coalition for nearly 30 years until he took in office in 2018. The TPLF denies responsibility and says the report attack is a pretext of an invasion. It is impossible to verify the assertions on all sides because telephone lines and internet links to Tigray are severed and journalists are barred from entering the region. The eruption of fighting came after months of rising tension, including Tigray's holding of regional elections in September in defiance of the federal government, which had postponed nationwide polling in August because of the coronavirus pandemic. Abiy's government says the vote won by the TPLF in a landslide is illegal and begins to withhold funds meant for social welfare program in Tigray, a region of 6 million. As fighting intensifies, there are concerns a conflict in Ethiopia could reverberate across the already fragile Horn of Africa, impacting neighbors Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and Sudan. Abiy sacks the head of the military, whose top brass includes the battle-hardened Tigrayans, while on November 9th, the federal government carries out more air raids in Tigray, with Abiy saying the operation will be over soon. On November 14th, the TPLF forces fired rockets at Asmara, the capital of neighboring Eritrea, which has a long-running enmity with the TPLF leadership. The TPLF leader, Debretsion Gabri-Michael, also said its forces had been fighting Eritrean troops on several fronts for the past few days. Tens of thousands of refugees flee into neighboring Sudan, describing the horror of intensified fighting, including horrific killings. As the refugee flow swells, tension mounts between Ethiopia and Sudan, part of whose frontier is disputed. After 10 days of fighting, the United Nations warned of possible war crimes in Tigray. Having rejected peace talks and international calls for an end to the fighting, Abiy says government tanks are advancing on Tigray's capital, Mekelle. The city comes under heavy shelling before Abiy announces on November 28th that military operations in Tigray are completed. However, fighting continues in parts of Tigray. In February 2021, Amnesty International says Eritrean soldiers killed hundreds of civilians in November in the holy city of Axiom in Tigray. Most reports of atrocities emerge, with civilians accusing Eritrean forces of carrying out massacre and systematic rape. On March 10th, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Eritrea to withdraw from the region and describes violence in western Tigray as ethnic cleansing. He also calls for special forces from Ethiopia's Amhara region, which borders Tigray to the south, to be ordered out of this dispute area they have already taken. For months, Ethiopia and Eritrea flatly denied the involvement of Eritrean troops in the conflict. But on March 23rd, Abiy finally admits that Eritrean troops have crossed the borders into Tigray. He also suggests that they have been involved in atrocities against civilians. The next day, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission says Eritrean soldiers massacred more than 100 civilians in Azum in November in what may amount to crimes against humanity. The findings by the government affiliated by an independent body corroborate separate investigations by both Amnesty and Human Rights Watch. After admitting Eritrean's role, Abiy flies to its capital, Asmara, to meet Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki. During the visit, Abiy says Eritrea has agreed to pull its forces back from its borders. Over a week later, Ethiopian says Eritrean troops have started to evacuate Tigray, but on 15th of April, the UN top humanitarian official says there is no evidence of withdrawal and warns the crisis in the embattled region has deteriorated. The conflict is over and things are not improving. Mark Lukok says he gives a sobering assessment of the event on the ground, calling the report of systematic rape, gang rape and sexual violence especially disturbing and alarming widespread. Furthermore, Lukok said he received a report of 150 people dying of hunger in one area of southern Tigray, calling it a sign of what lies ahead if more action is not taken. A day later, Eritrea, which has denied the allegations of rape and other crimes leveled against its soldiers as outrageous and vicious attack on the culture and history of our people, also acknowledges for the first time that its forces are taking part in conflict and promises to pull them out of Tigray. On April 22nd, after multiple meetings that had failed to produce any kind of concrete outcome, the UN Secretary Council finally issued its first joint statement on the continuing crisis, expressing deep concern about allegations of human rights violations, including reports of sexual violence against women and girls. The 15th member body also called for a scaled-up humanitarian response and unfettered human access to address humanitarian needs, including for people to be embattled region who are in need of food assistance. Ethiopia's mission to the UN called the situation in Tigray an internal affair regulated by the law of the country, including human rights laws. It says the Ethiopian government is providing significant portion of the humanitarian assistance delivered to those in need and will continue to allocate the maximum available resources and stress the commitment to investigate and ensure accountability for alleged human rights violation will be upheld. On April 27th, the UN latest humanitarian update for Tigray describes the active hostilities reported in the central, eastern and northern western part of the region. Thousands of people, if not 10,000, are estimated to have been killed in the conflict, with nearly 2 million displaced and some 4.5 million in need of food assistance. The conflict is really, really disheartening, and if much attention is not taken, it would be very, very bad. So we move to the terror groups in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government launched a huge security operation against the Tigray People's Liberation Front last year. Ethiopia has added 2 armed groups to its terror list, including the Tigray People's Liberation Front, against which launched a massive security operation last year. The Council of Ministers approved a resolution on Saturday to designate the TPLF as a terrorist organization along with the OLF-Shene after several attacks in different parts of the country targeting civilians and public infrastructure over the past couple of years. The move, endorsed by the meeting of cabinet ministers chaired by the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, could be led to further persecution and the arrest of group members and supporters. A statement issued by the Prime Minister's office said the 2 groups operate as terrorists and the management or decision makers have acknowledged or are leading destructive actions on the nation. It added the decision will apply to organizations and individuals who collaborate, have links or relate to the ideas and actions of the designated terrorist organization. Local broadcaster Tifano reported that the Council of Ministers listed the two groups due to the activities, arming, training and financing other volunteer elements in addition to engaging in attack themselves. They have been launching attacks against civilian and public infrastructure to achieve political objectives, Tifano reported. Abiy accused TPLF forces of attacking the Ethiopian military on November 3rd and killing soldiers while they were sleeping and looting military hardware, prompting the Ethiopian government to launch a sweeping law enforcement operation. The TPLF says the attack was a preemptive aid. On November 28th, Abiy declared the military confrontation over after the fall of the regional capital Mekelle to the federal army. But fighting has continued recently in central and western Tigray. Conflict Prevention Group ICG, a Brussels-based think tank, said in a briefing published in early April. The number of fighters loyal to the TPLF is likely swollen because of rising fury over atrocities, it said. The violence followed years of tension between the TPLF and the central government in a conflict that has driven hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes and caused widespread destruction. The Ethiopian government is also involved in operations against the OLA, a military splinter group from the Oromo Liberation Front, mostly in the Oromia region. The government alleges that the OLA is killing civilians and is behind distractions in the Oromia region and other parts of the country. On Friday, the government accused the group of killing 15 civilians. The OLA denied responsibility for the alleged attacks and accused the government of the killings. For the cabinet proposal to come into effect, it will have to be approved by the Ethiopian lawmakers. Thank you so much for joining me. This is where I draw the curtains on the editorials. My name is Sandra. Asante. See you some other time.